The third round of the FIDE World Cup started today in Khanty-Mansiysk, and I'd like to show you the finish of a game between Nikita Vitiugov and Sergei Karjakin. This is really beautiful and really subtle. So Vitiugov, 32 years old, Russian player, very, very experienced. I mean, he's notched up some great tournament victories in the past, Gibraltar, for example. He's also very well respected amongst his colleagues. So he's been the second for Peter Svidler, for example, on a couple of occasions. And he was playing Sergei Karjakin, the Russian Minister of Defense. Of course, challenged for the world title in 2016. Incredible experience. He actually won the FIDE World Cup in 2015. I think this format of mini matches suits him pretty well. So let's take a look at the position. We've already had 47 moves. Vitiugov with the white pieces. Now you can see that there are weaknesses around Karjakin's king. 7th rank is open, the 8th rank is open, and there are weak dark squares around the king. Vitiugov much earlier had managed to advance his h-pawn to weaken those dark squares. But Karjakin has defended extremely well. He's managed to exchange off pieces, and also he's about to take this pawn here on b3. But there are opposite coloured bishops on the board, and that always gives attacking chances. Now that bishop on c6 is blunted by the pawn on f3, and you can see the difference between the two positions. White's king is pretty safe here. Black's king exposed, and White's bishop much stronger than Black's bishop. So let's see what happened. Karjakin took on b3. So it feels like he's simplifying the position, and obviously, you know, that is a big pawn to take. Now, if this queen goes into e7, threatening a mate, then actually Black's queen would be able to come back. Let's just see that. Queen here, and actually Black can defend that position. But Vitiugov played an excellent move here. Queen e5. Now, queens, they always say, should be centralized, and this is a beautiful centralization. So there are a couple of ideas that White has. One is to play the queen down to b8 and give a check there, and then come here. And the other is to play the bishop back to d4 to set up this battery. So that is not easy at all. I suppose the obvious reaction here is to play the queen to d5. I should say that Black actually played the queen back to f7 here. So what happens on queen d5? Well, obviously in that case, exchanging queens would just lead to a draw. Now that is a case where opposite coloured bishops leads to a dead drawn position. But so often opposite coloured bishops actually give you excellent winning chances, because you can't match that bishop, that dark square bishop. It can't be exchanged off. So after queen d5, in fact, Black is now lost. So let's see exactly what White's threat is. Queen b8. Now if the king comes up to g7, that is checkmate straight away. A very beautiful finish. So king f7 is forced. We check the king up the board. Only one square. We check the king up the board again. Only one square. And now g4 check. It's important to make sure that a win is there before you play a weakening move like g4 check, but of course it is. In this case, the king can't step here because of the bishop. And bishop f2 check. And queen h4 checkmate. Got there in the end. So you can see what a deadly duo the queen and bishop can be, especially when they're opposite colour bishops. So back to this position. Queen e5 has just been played. And Karjakin plays the best defensive move, Queen f7. Now, if Queen b8 here, then that can be blocked out by Queen e8. And be careful, because Black's queen could find some counterplay here. Remember, exchange of queens is just a dead draw. White needs to keep the attack. If White wants a safe move, you could just take on b4. That eliminates that potentially dangerous pawn, but that gives Black time to chase the queen. Vitiugov played in a much more vigorous way, not messing about. It's bishop d4. So that leaves this pawn here, but he's going on the attack, and naturally that threatens checkmate in one move. Now already this is difficult for Black. We could give the king a flight square by moving the queen out of the way. So Queen d7, that keeps protecting g7, but in this case after check, King has to step up, then we take here, and then this pawn is going to drop, and in that case White can even contemplate exchanging queens. I mean, you'd rather not, but it could be that that's simply a technical win with the king supporting these two connected passed pawns. So bishop d4 has just been played, mate threatened. So Karjakin defended in the best way, king f8. Now it just feels as though there is something on after king f8, because it's now on a dark square, which makes it even more vulnerable, even more open to attack from this bishop. Also, this bishop is loose, so you're thinking this must be somehow winning for White. The obvious way is to try and pick up that bishop with queen d6. I should say this didn't happen. Let's just take a quick look. In fact, Black can defend after this with queen e7. Exchange of queens means draw. So queen takes bishop, and now there is a counterplay. In fact, Black can take a draw here, but after queen takes bishop, in fact, Black now is in a winning position, supporting that with the queen supporting the pawn. So the obvious way, queen d6 or indeed queen c5, could also be met by queen e7. They don't work. So let's try. So bishop c5 was tried. The king stepped back. Vitiugov repeated the position. So Karjakin repeated the position. Of course, he's happy with a draw here. But Vitiugov now found a really, really sneaky move. He played king to f2. Now that is tricky. In fact, Black is still holding this position, but to get the right move is extremely difficult. So let's check out some options. So, well, first of all, let's find out what the threat is. So what happens, for example, if Black just pushes this b pawn? Why not? Let's see what White's got. Well, in this case, queen d6 is a winning move, because after queen e7 we can take the bishop. There's no longer a check here, and if queen h4 check, in fact we can protect that bishop, and White has a winning position. You can check the king again, but the king just staggers up the board, and White is winning. So we've discovered what the threat is. The threat is queen d6. Okay, how does Black deal with that? Well, how about moving the bishop? Let's try bishop d5. In this case, White is winning. Let's see how. A check. Queen b8. And now, because the bishop has moved this way, there's no longer a block on e8. The king comes up, and we can drive Black's king in front of its pawns, and you can see just how strong that dark squared bishop is, the opposite colour bishops, and black gets mated on the dark squares. So wow, this is tricky stuff. Okay, the king has stepped up. What about if black gives a check? Let's try queen a2 check. Well, the king can step up. In fact, the best way to go is bishop b2. Then queen check. King escapes the checks. The queen comes back. And here's the problem for black. Then in fact white's queen can get down and take those pawns, and that queen even defends that pawn d3. Well, it's not definitely winning yet, but white has excellent winning chances because of those pawns. Not to mention potentially a continuing attack as well. So how on earth does black defend this? In fact, there is a good move here. Not an obvious move. Karjakin thought for 5 minutes here and didn't come up with the right move. Bishop d7, which feels very passive, in fact still defends for black. Let's try various things. Well, if queen h8, then you can block like this. Black is okay there. Okay, what else have we got? Bishop c5 check. The king goes in the corner. You can take this pawn. This is still not so simple, but, well, black actually is able to defend this, and that's a key move. If black's king can come to h7, then it's going to be easier to defend those dark squares. What else have we got? We've got queen b8, but in this case, well, in fact queen e8 is okay, and yeah, there's actually not a lot going on here, and g5 starts to give black some room on the king side. So in this position, the slightly unlikely bishop d7 is in fact the best move. Very subtle indeed. Karjakin played the kind of obvious move, queen d5, which keeps an eye on the bishop on d4. In fact, this is losing, and after bishop c5, he resigned straight away. Let's go through the options. Well, if king f7, this is mate. Tout sweet after that. And king g8. Well, in this case, once again, we can check the black king up the board. Sorry, that we've seen that one. That is mate. Sorry, no, we haven't seen that. That is mate on f8. That's a nice checkmate. We had that last time. So king g8, queen b8. Okay, let's see what happens again if we chase the king up the board. Now it's slightly different this time. In fact, it's even quicker because the king gets to f4, and then, well, queen e3 and bishop e3 are checkmate. Very nice stuff. So what a tricky position. That was the final position after bishop c5. So Karjakin was caught out there. He was under pressure for actually most of the game, and you know, when that happens, when your opponent has the initiative, it is very hard to defend. So he's in a must-win situation in the next classical game. Remember, if you're not a subscriber, click on that button, free to subscribe, and do check out the links to patreon.com, PowerPlayChess, and you can also donate via PayPal as well. If you'd like to support the channel, help us keep the lights on. Thanks a lot.